Jenny Thompson, and today I'm going to show you how to make spelt bread. The first thing that we are going to do with our bread is proof our yeast. This dissolves the yeast so that it can be evenly distributed throughout our dough. So the first thing you need is 3 cups of hot water. This can be straight from your tap, just to get it as hot as it will go. We're just going to go ahead and pour that into our mixer. The next thing that you are going to need is some type of sugar. Now the sugar is going to be used as food for the yeast in order to grow it. Now I have taken my 1 cup measure, and in it is a 1/3 cup of honey. You can use anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 cup depending on how sweet you want your bread. I have oiled the inside of the measure so that the honey will not stick. So we're just going to go ahead and dump our honey right in there. It looks like we stuck a little bit. Apparently I didn't oil it as well as I thought. Now the next thing that we're going to do is take our yeast. This is 2 tablespoons of yeast. You want 1 teaspoon of yeast per 3 cups of flour that you are going to do with your bread. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to sprinkle it over the top of the water. I'm going to pick up my little handy cam here so that you guys can see how this is sprinkled. Like it turned off on me here. There we go. Gotta open the lens cover. It told me I will get better at this. All right. So here, you guys will be able to see. I've got honey in my hand. As I sprinkle, I'm just going to sprinkle that around the top of our water there. We're just going to let that sit there for about 5 minutes. And while we let that sit here, we're going to turn around over here and grind our spelt. All right. So I'm going to wipe off my hand there. So this is my mill, and I'm just going to load about 8 cups of spelt here, the spelt berries that I have here, into my hopper. Now, you don't want to use as many spelt berries in your grinder as you would another kind of berry, whether it be hard red or white wheat, because the spelt tends to be a little fluffier and it fills your canister down here a little bit more than the other. So we're just going to pour that in here. I'll put my lid on here. Now, when you grind spelt, the one thing that I have found over the past couple months is that you want to have your motor on the largest and most open it will go, and then we're going to turn our feed rate to the widest it will go. With the spelt, you want to make the gluten ground up, but you want to leave the fiber part, the outside part of the spelt, as large as you can be, because spelt doesn't have a lot of gluten in it, and so we don't want the fiber small to interfere with that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on over here, and as soon as I'm done grinding the wheat, it does get a little loud. So as soon as I'm done grinding the wheat, I'll be back to show you what it looks like. Okay, well now we have ground our spelt, and it's here in our container, and I'm going to record here for you so you can see what it looks like. Now, you need to stir your flour that you have just ground, because there will be pockets of fiber around in the container, and we want to make sure those are mixed in well so that we don't have an overabundance of fiber in our bread. If we did, it would be too dry and be really, really crumbly. I want to show you in here that you can see there are pockets of fiber through there, and that's so we're just going to stir those around here. Put that down over here while we get it stirred in real well. I'm just going to mix this up. My son, my number 3 son, we have 6 kids, so my number 5 child, number 3 son, likes to stick his hand in here and help stir. And he actually eats the flour out of his hand. It's very good for you, lots of nutrients since it is freshly ground in there. So here we are all stirred up. So now our yeast has proofed, and I will give you a little shot of what that looks like here. So we've got some still floating on the top there, but that's okay. It'll mix in, it'll get dissolved here, but for the most part, the yeast is dissolved. So we're going to go ahead and put in and start with 9 cups of the whole spelt. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And you do not have to be accurate in your cups. It's fine if they're a little full. I found another pocket of that fiber. I want to get that mixed in there. That should be about right. I'm going to set this aside over here. Now, because spelt has a lower gluten content than, let's say, your hard red or your hard white, we are going to add to this some white spelt flour. Now, I like the berries and the spelt flour from Spelt. It seems to do better in baking, and you can also get it cheaper in the bulk there, and that's how I buy mine, is in the bulk. So we're going to throw in here, to start with, about 4 cups. 3, 4. All right, now my flour is in there. On top of my flour, I'm going to add a tablespoon of regular table salt. You can use any kind of salt you want, Celtic, kosher, any kind you want. So do that in there. Now we're going to raise this up and get this started. Now through the past couple months, I have found that I need something else to help bind the spelt together. And so the thing that I have found that has worked the best is eggs. And I use 1 egg per 3 cups of flour, or per recipe. And I will get this recipe posted on a website and let you know where that is. And that way you can see it and you can make as many batches or as little as you need. I make 4 loaves at a time because my kids, I have to make bread about every other day. So because they do take this as their lunch. So as this is mixing, I'm going to drop in my eggs, which I cracked beforehand, into a bowl because I have a really bad habit of getting my shells in my eggs. And nobody likes to bite into a really good piece of bread and find a shell. So we're going to go ahead and drop those in as it's kneading through, and it'll just mix them. You can mix them up if you want, you can beat them if you want, or you can leave them whole. It does not matter because it will, through the kneading process, it will be mixed and kneaded. So put this over here. And we're just going to let that incorporate. Now it's very important to let the spelt flour or the spelt dough knead, because that develops the gluten, and since there's not a lot of gluten content in the bread or in the spelt itself, and we, of course, we've added a little more here with the white spelt, we need to give that time to actually develop that so that we can get a better dough consistency. So we're going to let that knead there, and I'm going to show you what this looks like here with my hand cam. And you can kind of see what that is doing. Now I used to use just the paddle to get it to start as it started to mix, but I have since just gone with the dough hook on my KitchenAid because I have found that extra kneading with the dough hook, that it actually develops the gluten and makes a better elasticity in the dough. So this is, I just start with the dough hook and let it go, and it does take a little bit longer. So if you are in a hurry, you can use your paddle attachment or any other attachment that gets it mixed in faster. But like I said, it does do a little bit better if you use the hook to begin with because of the developing of the gluten. So we do need some more flour in there. So I'm going to let that turn off that for just a minute and lower. It's easier to lower it down. I'm just going to sprinkle in a couple more cups. We're pretty wet there, and we're looking for a good elastic dough. And you'll know when it's done when it starts pulling off the sides. It'll still be a little sticky, but it will be totally clear of the sides. So we're going to let that develop a little bit. And as I mentioned earlier, I have 6 kids, all with my husband Darren, and we have 3 that have autism, and that's how I got into doing the Spelt products. We had them, we do biomed with them, and we had been on what's called the GAPS diet. You can look that up at GAPS, GAPS diet.com if you want. And we had them on that for a while, for about a year, and then we decided it was time to add some grains back into their diet. And as we did some research, we found that people who couldn't tolerate the gluten could actually tolerate spelt a little bit better. So I started experimenting with the spelt and found that you really can do most of your baked goods with the spelt. And most anything, you have to tweak the recipe a little bit, and that's what I'm here for, is to show you those recipes that I've already tweaked. And that way, and you can have just wonderful, wonderful baked goods and other goods, chicken nuggets and stuff. I've used that, and we'll do that in a little bit later episode here. And we are pulling away from the sides, so, and you can see it's coming up the top a little bit. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to see how sticky. Now it's still a little sticky for my taste, so I'm just going to sprinkle, I get flour on myself, just a little bit more of that on there. We're going to let that incorporate into that. And I'll get my little handy cam out here so you guys can see how that is looking there. And you can see that it's developing very, very nicely. It's still flour on the edges, so it is pulling more from the edges. But like I said, it was a bit sticky for my taste there. I like it to just have a bit of stick when you touch it, and that's how I always tell how I like it. I have to touch with my fingers there. So that looks like it's doing pretty well, and I want to turn this off for a minute and pull this back down in there so that gets incorporated through. And so as you can see here, it is a little sticky there, and when I put it sticks just a tad. Now I am kneading this on, I'm doing it backwards here, on the first setting of my KitchenAid. I don't want it any higher than that. You can over knead spelt, and as you can with any flour. And so I want to be very careful and not do that. And the first setting is fine. So there we go. It looks like it's pulling away from the sides very, very nicely. So I'm going to call that done. So we're going to turn that off there. I'm going to turn off my handy cam here. So earlier, I had over here taken my bread. This is my biggest stainless steel bowl, and I have inside oiled it or greased it. Now I use coconut oil. I love coconut oil. You can use whatever oil you want. So I have greased this bowl because we don't want as the bread rises. And you may have to, I just throw my hands in here and oil them up a little bit because the dough is rather sticky. So we're just going to pull it off the hook here. We're going to dump it in here, and you can see that it is still pretty sticky down in there. So we're just going to pull that out and drop it. It's pretty warm too, which is what you want. Pull that in here. You can see I still have some. It didn't all come clean, but that's okay. It's supposed to be sticky. I'm going to stick this in the sink over here. Then I'm going to pick up my dough here, and I'm going to form it into a ball, like so. Now I'm going to stick it in my bowl that is oiled there, and I'm going to throw a towel over it. We're going to let this sit for anywhere from a half an hour to an hour, depending on how fast it takes to rise. Now, in your cooler weather, it's going to take longer because your dough will not be as warm as, let's say, in the summertime when there's more humidity and it's warmer in your house. So find as warm a place as you can. It will still rise even if it's a little cool in your house. But like I said, your rising time is going to be different depending on the temperature that is in your house. So we're just going to let this sit, and as soon as it's risen, I will be back to show you what it looks like, and we will get it in our loaf pans. Thanks so much. Okay, so we're back, and our bread has risen double in size. That's what you want. It's almost to the top of the bowl here. Now I'm going to take off my cloth here and give you a little bit of a shot here with the handy cam so that you can see what that looks like on top here. Zoom out a little bit. You can see that it's risen there in the bowl. Now, the bread pans that I like to use are the the non-stick. These are Grand Gourmet brand. You can use any brand you want. I like this size of pan. It makes a really nice loaf. It doesn't take too long to bake, and it is baked through. I've tried stoneware pans, the larger ones. They don't bake quite as well, I don't feel. So I am sticking with my Grand Gourmet ones. And you can see those pans there. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to grab over here. I forgot to grab my oil. So I'm going to grab my coconut oil that's right over here real quick. I'm going to oil up my hands. This is Luana's coconut oil. As I mentioned before, I love coconut oil, and you can get this at Kroger, at Walmart. Carries it for about a little over $5 for this container. You don't have to use the organic stuff. But as I said, I love coconut oil. Wonderful stuff. So I'm just going to punch your dough back down. Here we're just going to, if you're angry or what have you, don't take it out on your bread. My mom used to make bread when we were younger. And sorry, Mom, but I have to tell a story. And you do want to be gentle with your dough. We used to, at night, my mom and dad would make bread together for the next morning for our lunches. And as we were upstairs laying in our beds, you would hear ka-thunk, ka-thunk. And that was my dad, who is 6'3", nice burly lumberjack type guy, big muscles on his arms, throwing the bread down on the table, which did not help the yeast. And we ended up having sandwiches from that bread that were, about so big. Yeah, it did not rise well. So we have learned since then to be gentle with our dough. So I pushed that down, and I'm just going to, you can do this with a scale. You don't have to be real accurate, but I need 4 loaves. So I'm just going to squeeze. Do not rip your dough. You want to squeeze it and let it come apart on its own. So I'm just going to, as you can see, I'm just getting it so that my fingers can go around there. And I'm just going to squeeze it off and put it in my pan there. And then I will even them up a little later. I'm just going to, again, I just get my hand fingers around there and just squeeze that there separate. So now we can move this bowl. We'll just set it right over here. Move our coconut oil over. And as you can see now, I have, I'll pull this back a little bit, my dough in here in my pans. And as I look, this one here seems like it's a little small. So I'm just going to squeeze a little bit off. Again, you can weigh it if you want, to get them more accurate if you want that. I'm not that concerned about it. They'll all turn out fine. So then I'm just going to roll them up so that I can get a log and put that in the pan there, and you just kind of fold it under on itself. Get that roll and lay it in the pan. You can push it down so it fills the pan, and I'll get a picture of that here in just a minute. So roll that in, and rolling it in helps also squeeze out some of those air bubbles. You don't want it. You want to get most of those air bubbles from its first rising out. So I'm just going to put that in that pan. Pull this one up, pull it in on itself. And you'll be able to tell if most of the air bubbles are out. It doesn't feel as fluffy, but you can see how elastic that dough is, and that's what you want. And it's still a little sticky. That's why I like the non-stick pans. You don't want to, it's very hard after the bread is baked to turn it over and try to shake it out if the bottom is sticking. And I've never ever had a problem with these pans, and they don't rust. So we look pretty even there, and here I'll get a little swipe here with our handy cam so you can see that. Here we are. Here's our dough all put in our pan there. You can see they look pretty even there. So what I'm going to do now is cover these with a towel, and I'm going to put them over on the stove. As the stove warms, it'll give a little warmth, and we're going to let these proof for just a little bit. Probably it'll take about 10-15 minutes for the oven to heat up. We're going to bake these at 350 for about 25 minutes. So I'm going to get the oven preheated, and then we'll be back to show you what they look like after a couple minutes when the oven is preheated, and then we'll stick them in the oven. So we'll see you then. All right, so we're back, and it's been about 15 minutes, and our bread has filled the pans here. I'll just pick one of those up. As you can see, it has risen quite nice. So, and our oven is preheated to 350 here. So we're going to go ahead and put these in the oven however they fit in your oven. I have an LG stove, and it has a large capacity oven with 6 kids. You kind of need a little bit more oven space. And so I lay mine so that they are next to each other. So I'll show you here in the oven how I put them in. So I'm going to put mine like this, 2 on one side and 2 on the other here. Slide those in gently. We're going to bake this, again, for 25 minutes. Now, if you don't know, ovens bake differently. And so if you're not quite sure how hot your oven is, it can be off by a couple degrees if your oven's a little older. Then just make sure that when you start smelling the bread, that you go check on it. Make sure it's not getting too brown. So it's a good indication when you start smelling it that it's very close to being done. So then you can kind of see how long it's been in the oven, and you can kind of tell. It can go anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes depending on how old your oven is and how hot it runs. Some ovens run hotter than others. So just check it so that you know. And we're going to be back here in about 25 minutes. We're going to let this bake, and I will show you the end product, and we'll even cut some because there isn't anything like a fresh slice of bread straight from the oven. So I'll see you back here in about 25 minutes. Hi, it's been 25 minutes and our bread is now out of the oven. I don't know how long yours took, but by now your house should be smelling just filled with wonderful aromas of bread. Now my kids are going to be home from school here in just a minute, but I wanted to show you here the bread. Now I've got it resting on trivets right now to cool off a little bit, but you really want to get it out of the pans after about 5 minutes of having set in the pans, because it will collect condensation in the bottom and it will make the bottom of your bread soggy. So as I said earlier, I like these nonstick pans, and this is why. It just falls right out. And I want to show you how beautiful of a color that you get on that bread with those pans. So I'm just going to stick it here with each of my pans here. I'm going to just flip them out so we don't have that condensation here. And as you can see also in my pan, there is nothing that's stuck. So I actually do not even have to wash these. I can just stack them and put them away, which is, with having as many people we do in our family, any less dish that I have to wash makes a huge difference. So again, we have our 4 loaves. We're just going to stick those out here and stack the bread here. Get those out of the way. Now when you cook this, you do want to wait a little while for it to cool, because if you don't let it cool, it is baking still just a little bit inside. As it's hot and it's cooling, it is baking just a little bit. So you do want to let that set and finish until it's just warm to the touch. And then I suggest cutting it with a serrated knife. Other knives will make your bread flat or it'll squish it, and you do not want to do that. So a serrated knife works really, really well. Again, it will be more crumbly than normal bread because it is spelt, but it will not crumble. It will have a wonderful flavor. It will not crumble as much as if we hadn't added the eggs or the extra white spelt flour. So I hope you enjoy it. It is just, you are in for a great treat here after it cools. Put some really great, wonderful, soft butter on it and let it melt into that, and just enjoy your spelt bread. Next week I hope to be doing pretzels, and I hope you'll join us then. Thanks so much. You have a great week.
What can I tell you? I should never get into a Diamond's kit, but after I get it's a Diamond's kit, I get just wanted to patiently. That's so. No, Taylor.